War began with a single message. It crossed the dark void between stars in less than a second, carried by quantum channels no human could touch. The Galactic Alliance had sent it to every world under its control. The message was short. It had no greetings, no warnings, only one line. Earth is now an enemy of the galaxy. Across the galaxy, alien fleets began to move. Massive warships, glowing with the light of distant suns, changed course. In the cold silence of space, hangar doors opened. Thousands of fighters rose like swarms of silver insects, ready to spread across the stars. The Alliance was confident. They had faced rebellions before. They had crushed pirate empires and burned entire planets until nothing lived. To them, Earth was just another small, stubborn world, one that would fall like all the rest. But they had made one mistake. On Earth, there was no panic, no desperate scrambling for safety, no cries of fear. In a room deep beneath the capital city, the leaders of Earth gathered around a long table. Some were military generals in dark uniforms. Others were scientists and engineers, their faces lit by the glow of holographic maps. At the head of the table sat the president of Earth, her hands folded, her expression calm. She listened as a young officer read the Alliance's message aloud. When he finished, silence filled the room. Then, slowly, the president smiled. It was not a smile of amusement. It was not even a smile of defiance. It was the kind of smile that comes when a long-awaited moment finally arrives. "They think they can frighten us," she said quietly. "They have no idea." She turned her gaze to the admiral sitting to her right. "Admiral Rourke," she said, "it's time. Open the vault." The words seemed to change the air in the room. Generals sat straighter. Scientists exchanged glances. Admiral Rourke, a tall man with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to see through stone, gave a short nod. He did not ask questions. He simply stood and walked out, his boots striking the floor with slow, heavy steps. Far below the surface of Earth, hidden in a place even most military officers did not know existed, lay the vault. It was older than anyone in that room, older than most of Earth's cities. It had been built in secret after the first contact with alien life, long before the Alliance knew the truth about humanity's plans. The vault was not made of gold or jewels. It was made of steel and silence. Inside it, in the shadows, rested the most dangerous warships humanity had ever built. They were larger than mountains, their armor darker than the space between stars. Their engines were built not to travel, like other ships, but to appear anywhere without warning. For decades, they had slept in the dark. No light had touched their hulls. No sound had echoed in their corridors. Now, Admiral Rourke walked between them, his hand brushing the cold metal. As he passed, the ships began to wake. Lights flickered to life along their sides. Engines rumbled like distant thunder. High above, in the space around Earth, alien scouts were already arriving. They scanned the planet from orbit, confident that their enemy was weak. But then their sensors picked up something strange. Massive. Energy readings deep beneath the planet's crust. Before they could identify them, the readings vanished. Their instruments went blind, as if something was erasing their data. One scout captain stared at his screen in confusion. This can't be right," he whispered. "It's like they just disappeared." Back on Earth, Admiral Rourke stepped into the command bridge of the largest ship in the vault, a dreadnought known only by its code name, Erebus. Its walls were lined with strange, angular consoles, each one built for human hands only. The crew was already aboard, each person chosen for their loyalty and skill. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. They had been waiting for this day, for their entire lives. The engines of the Erebus roared to life. The ground above the vault split open, revealing a dark mouth that reached up to the stars. The dreadnought rose slowly, its massive shadow swallowing the sunlight. As it broke through the clouds, the people of Earth looked up. They did not cheer. They did not wave. They simply watched in silence, understanding that the war had already begun. In the far reaches of the galaxy, Alliance leaders received their first reports of human movement. The data was confusing. One report claimed that a single human ship had left Earth's atmosphere. Another report said the ship was invisible to scanners, as if it did not exist. One nervous commander asked, "How can we fight something we can't? See?" But the Alliance had no time to argue. A new alert flashed across their war maps. The human ship was moving at impossible speed, heading straight for one of their fleets. The commander of that fleet laughed when he heard. "One ship?" he said. "They think they can scare us with one ship?" On the Erebus, Admiral Rourke stood at the center of the bridge. The stars stretched out before him, cold and endless. His crew watched him, waiting for the order. He thought of the president's words. They have no idea. He smiled, just as she had, and gave the command. Set course. First target, Vega Fleet, and make it fast. The Erebus surged forward, vanishing from human and alien scanners alike. The war had started, but not the way the galaxy expected. For the first time in centuries, the hunters were about to become the hunted. Far behind, in the quiet halls of Earth's command center, the president looked out at the stars through a tall glass window. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of machines. She knew the galaxy thought it had chosen this war. But the truth was simple. Earth had been waiting for it. And now, it had begun. The Erebus tore through space in silence, leaving no trail for alien sensors to follow. Inside its armored hull, Admiral Rourke stood at the central command platform, surrounded by glowing tactical displays. Each one showed fragments of enemy. Fleet movements gathered from secret human probes hidden in deep space for decades. The crew worked with cold precision, their voices low, their eyes locked on their stations. None of them needed to ask why they had been awakened. They already knew. Back on Earth, far below the surface where sunlight could not reach, the vault continued to open. Massive slabs of reinforced steel moved on ancient mechanisms, revealing row after row of human warships, each one designed for a different purpose. Some were swift and narrow, made for silent infiltration. Others were hulking carriers, built to unleash swarms of unmanned attack craft. But at the heart of the vault were the dreadnoughts, the titans of Earth's hidden arsenal. Each was a floating fortress, bristling with weapons that the galaxy had never even seen before. These ships were not just machines. They were the result of a century of quiet preparation. The day humanity learned it was not alone in the universe. The day the first alien envoy landed, Earth had smiled and welcomed them. But deep within, the leaders had understood the truth. One day, this galaxy would test humanity's strength. So, in the shadows, they had built the vault. Admiral Rourke remembered his first time here, decades ago as a young officer. He had walked between the silent giants, feeling their cold hulls beneath his fingertips. He had been told that these ships would only wake if the very survival of humanity was at stake. That time had come. In the dim light of the vault, engineers moved quickly, unlocking clamps that had held the ships for generations. Great cables as thick as trees disconnected with heavy clangs. Power flowed into systems that had slept for years, making consoles flicker to life. The air shook with the low rumble of engines warming for the first time in decades. One by one, the dreadnoughts began to rise, their armored hulls reflecting the glow of emergency lights. High above, hidden hangar doors opened in the oceans. In remote mountain ranges, even under the ice of Antarctica, the galaxy believed Earth had only a small fleet in orbit. Soon, they would learn the truth. Far across the stars, in the headquarters of the Galactic Alliance, alien commanders watched incoming reports in disbelief. "Our scouts are losing them," one said, his voice sharp with frustration. "They appear for a moment, then vanish from sensors." Another officer adjusted the holographic display, but the image of the human ships blinked in and out, as though reality itself could not hold them in view. "This is impossible," the officer growled. "No species develops cloaking of this level." The oldest commander in the room, his scaled hands resting heavily on the table, spoke quietly. "Perhaps they have been hiding far longer than we thought." On the Erebus, Rourke's voice broke the silence. "Report!" A young officer at the sensor station responded. "Vega fleet ahead, Admiral. 28 capital ships, 74 escorts. They have no idea we're here." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "Good. Let's keep it that way." While the Erebus closed in on its target, the vault continued to release its deadly cargo. Across the planet, underground command bunkers coordinated with the awakening fleet. Crews who had been training in simulation for their entire lives now took their places on real bridges, their hands moving with steady, almost mechanical precision. To the outside galaxy, this war was only hours old. To humanity, it was the final step in a plan that had been centuries in the making. A communications. Officer approached Rourke with a sealed data chip. "Message from Earth Command, sir. Priority level, black." Rourke took the chip, slid it into the console before him, and watched as a single phrase appeared in cold white letters. Phase 2 authorized. His lips curled into a faint smile. The first spark had been lit. Now, it was time to fan it into an inferno. On the other side of the galaxy, Vega Fleet's commander leaned back in his command chair, amused. "A single human ship? This is the best they can do?" he said to his bridge crew. "Prepare to destroy it the moment it enters. Range." But no one noticed that the Erebus had already arrived, silent as a shadow, weapons locked. In the vault, the last of the great dreadnoughts lifted into the darkness above, their engines burning brighter with each passing second. From space, Earth now seemed to glow with a faint ring of light as hundreds of hidden warships took their places in formation. The galaxy still believed humanity was cornered. Soon they would realize that the Predator was finally stepping out of the shadows. The vault had been opened. The hunt had begun. The Erebus drifted into position without a whisper of engine noise, a black shape against the cold stars. Ahead, the Vega fleet filled the void, dozens of massive alien warships arranged in perfect battle formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of a distant sun. They were confident, disciplined, and utterly unaware that death was already among them. Admiral Rourke stood at the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The crew moved in near silence, their voices kept low, every motion precise. This was not the first time they had trained for this, but it was the first time the drills had turned into reality. The sensor officer's voice broke the stillness. "We are within strike range, Admiral. They still have no lock on us." Rourke nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Arm Ghost Lance." At that order, deep within the Erebus, systems older than some of its crew came to life. The Ghost Lance was unlike any weapon the galaxy knew. It did not fire beams of light or streams of plasma. It did not launch missiles or guided torpedoes. When it fired, there was no flash, no sound, not even a shimmer in the blackness of space. Only results. Rourke glanced at his weapons officer. "Target their flagship." The officer's fingers moved across the console, locking onto a ship. At the center of the alien formation, a towering fortress bristling with weapons. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the alien flagship's forward hull twisted violently as if an invisible hand had crushed it. Metal tore like paper. Energy cores ruptured. In less than 5 seconds, the ship was gone, breaking apart into a silent field of burning fragments. Chaos rippled through the Vega fleet. Alien commanders shouted orders over comms, demanding answers. Their sensors found nothing. There was no visible attacker, no projectile to trace, no heat signature. To follow, ships began shifting out of formation, scanning the void for an enemy they could not see. Rourke's voice remained calm. "Next target. Cruiser portside. Fire!" Another silent kill. The cruiser's engines exploded first, sending it spinning helplessly before the rest of its structure disintegrated. More alien voices shouted over the comm networks, fear beginning to creep into their tones. The Erebus moved through them like a shadow, striking and vanishing, each attack precise and merciless. One alien captain, his scaled hands trembling, slammed a fist onto his console. "It's a phantom, it's—" His words cut off as his ship vanished in a white-hot bloom of fire. On the Erebus, the crew's faces remained cold and focused. To them, this was just the opening act. For decades, the Ghost Lance had been tested only in simulations, its potential never revealed to the galaxy. Now it was rewriting the rules of war in minutes. As the Vega fleet scrambled, Rourke tapped the comm panel and sent a short, encrypted message back to Earth Command. "First engagement. Enemy in full retreat within 7 minutes." True to his prediction, panic soon replaced the alien fleet's discipline. Smaller ships broke formation entirely, scattering into different directions in desperate attempts to escape. The larger vessels stayed, trying to form a defensive perimeter, but it was like building walls out of sand in the middle of a storm. One by one, they were erased from existence, their destruction invisible until it was too late. Then, as suddenly, as it began, the attack stopped. The Erebus powered down its Ghost Lance and drifted into the shadows once more. Rourke studied the tactical display, where the remains of Vega fleet now floated as drifting debris. He gave a single order: "Transmit." A signal pulsed through the void, aimed at no fleet in particular, but at every listening ear in the galaxy. It was short, only 4 words long, but its meaning was clear enough to freeze the blood of every alien commander who heard it. "We are just starting." Across Alliance space, the message sparked chaos. Political leaders demanded immediate retaliation. Military strategists argued over what kind of weapon could achieve such results. Some refused to believe the reports entirely, calling them exaggerations from frightened captains. But others, those who had seen war before, understood the danger. Back on Earth, the president received Rourke's report and listened to it in silence. Around her, the other leaders watched as footage of the destroyed Vega fleet played on the holo screens. The president's face did not change, but deep in her eyes there was a glint of satisfaction. "Good," she said simply. "Now, they will come harder." Rourke's next orders arrived within minutes. Proceed deeper into Alliance space. Test the Ghost Lance against planetary defenses and prepare for Phase 2. As the Erebus set a new course, the crew's discipline never wavered. They knew the galaxy would now be hunting them with everything it had. They also knew the galaxy had never hunted something like this before. In the far reaches of Alliance territory, rumors began to spread among alien soldiers. They spoke of a human ship that could appear without warning, a ghost of metal and fire that destroyed anything it touched. Some called it the Shadow, others whispered a different name, Death's Smile. And somewhere deep in space, in a system not yet touched. By the war, a transmission from the Erebus reached its destination. It was not sent to Earth Command. It was not even sent to anyone in the Alliance. It was sent to coordinates long thought abandoned, to colonies humanity had once claimed were lost. In the silence of those distant worlds, hidden machines began to stir. Lights turned on in long-dead cities. Shipyards that had been dark for centuries began to hum with life. The war had only just begun, and humanity was about to reveal that it was far from fighting alone. The transmission from the Erebus traveled through secure channels buried deep in the void, slipping past the Alliance's listening stations as if they weren't even there. Its destination was far beyond the outer borders of human-controlled. space, in a sector that the galaxy had marked as dead. Official records said the colonies there had been destroyed long ago by an asteroid strike. No ships traveled there, no trade routes passed near it. It was a graveyard on every galactic map. But the truth was far from what the records claimed. Beneath the frozen surface of a barren world called Helios 7, an entire civilization had survived, in silence. These were not the peaceful colonies Earth spoke of in public history. These were the ones who had been chosen for a different purpose. Survivors, engineers, soldiers, and scientists who had been told to vanish from the galaxy's eyes and prepare for a future no one wanted to believe in. For 200 years they had hidden, building fleets in underground docks the size of cities, testing weapons in deep space where no sensors could reach, and training generation after generation for a war that had not yet come. Now, the Erebus had spoken the code they had been waiting for. 3 words: the Black Sun. In Helios 7's command chamber, a man with white hair and dark eyes leaned over a circular table glowing with a map of the galaxy. This was Commander Voss, leader of, the Outer Colony's Defense Command. Around him stood officers in dark armor, their faces set in grim lines. The message from Rourke played once more, and when it ended, silence hung over the room. Then Voss spoke, his voice like stone grinding against stone. So, it has begun. His second-in-command, a woman named Captain Seelan, nodded slowly. The Alliance, she asked. How many? Voss looked at the display, where reports of the Vega fleet's destruction were already beginning to appear from intercepted alien channels. Enough, he said, but not enough to stop us. In the underground shipyards, construction crews rushed to finish the final assembly of warships that had never been seen by the galaxy. They were sleeker than Earth's dreadnoughts, their hulls lined with strange black plating that bent light away. Their engines were designed for sudden bursts of impossible speed, and their weapons were older than even Earth's vault ships. Many had been reverse-engineered from alien tech stolen centuries ago, rebuilt with human ingenuity until they were far deadlier than their originals. Above Helios 7, vast hangar doors opened for the first time in generations. The black ships began to rise into the sky, one after another, forming into squadrons as they cleared the atmosphere. The stars above the colony seemed to dim as their numbers grew. On the Erebus, Admiral Rourke watched the incoming confirmation signals with a faint smirk. One by one, the outer colonies were answering his call, not just Helios 7, but the other hidden worlds as well. Kestrel Prime, hidden behind a permanent asteroid storm. The shipyards of Meridian 9, buried beneath the molten crust of a volcanic moon. Even the deep space station known only as Bastion, floating in the shadow of a black hole. All were coming online. Sir, the comms officer said. The colonies confirm readiness. Fleet movement already underway. Rourke nodded. Tell them to hold until my signal. We're not ready to reveal them yet. Across the galaxy, the Alliance's panic was growing. The destruction of the Vega fleet had been a shock, but now their long-range sensors were detecting faint, unidentifiable disturbances on the edges of their territory. Ships moving where no ships should be. Entire trade routes going dark. The reports made no sense. Some said they saw human ships, others swore they were something entirely different. The truth was worse. Rourke had unleashed the outer colonies, intelligence operatives, teams of infiltration craft designed to slide past enemy lines and cripple supply chains before a single battle even began. Fuel depots vanished in silent explosions. Communications relays were destroyed before alarms could sound. Outpost commanders woke to find their entire weapon grids offline, their defenses dead without a shot being fired. In the Alliance Council, Chambers' alien leaders argued bitterly. Some demanded the immediate launch of their largest fleets against Earth. Others urged caution, insisting they first understand the nature of this ghost war. But even as they argued, Rourke's shadow spread. On Earth, the president listened to secure updates from both the Erebus and the outer colonies. Her calm expression never changed, but there was a new sharpness in her eyes. This was no longer a defensive war. It was turning into something much larger. That night, in a dimly lit war room beneath the Capitol, she spoke to her generals. The Alliance thought they could frighten us. They thought they could isolate us. Instead, they've brought the galaxy's most dangerous force back into the light. The colonies are awake, and when the colonies move, the galaxy burns. On Helios 7, Commander Voss stood aboard his flagship, the Vanguard, as it broke free of the planet's gravity. He opened a channel to Rourke. "Admiral, the black sun rises. Give us our first target." Rourke's reply came without hesitation. "Not yet. I want them to feel safe for just a little longer. Then we take everything." The channel closed, and Voss turned to his bridge crew. "Prepare the fleet. When the signal comes, we strike so fast the Alliance won't even have time to scream." As the fleets of the outer colonies gathered in the darkness between stars, the Alliance unknowingly stood on the edge of a disaster far greater than they imagined. The war had begun with Earth's smile, but soon that smile would spread to the shadows of every hidden human world. And when those shadows moved, there would be no place left in the galaxy to hide. The Erebus cut through the void toward the edge of the Sol system, its dark hull swallowing the starlight around it. Admiral Rourke stood at the center of the bridge, reviewing fresh intelligence reports intercepted from Alliance communications. The enemy had taken the bait. Every scrap of false information planted by the outer colony's infiltration teams had pointed toward a single conclusion: that Earth's primary fleet was massing near Jupiter. The Alliance believed they had uncovered humanity's first true defensive line, and now they were moving to crush it. On Rourke's display, hundreds of enemy ships converged from multiple sectors, their movements carefully hidden from civilian eyes but perfectly clear to the Erebus's advanced sensors. It was the largest fleet assembled against Earth since the war began, and to the Alliance, it was a killing blow. But Rourke saw it for what it truly was, a chance to bleed them dry in one devastating stroke. Beneath the swirling storms of Jupiter, the trap waited. Hidden within the planet's radiation belt were weapon platforms the galaxy had never known existed. Massive orbital cannons anchored to invisible stations, each capable of punching a hole clean through a capital ship with a single shot. They had been built decades earlier in complete secrecy, buried in the shadow of Jupiter's moons, their existence known to only a handful of Earth's highest-ranking commanders. Now, their time had come. The Erebus slowed its approach, taking position behind Io, one of Jupiter's great volcanic moons. The planet's endless lightning storms lit the darkness in brief, violent flashes, casting the ship in sharp silhouette, before it vanished again into shadow. The crew worked quickly, feeding target coordinates to the orbital cannons, synchronizing fire patterns with the Erebus's own weapon systems. In the outer reaches of the system, the first Alliance ships arrived. Sleek cruisers and heavily armored battleships fanned out in attack formation, their captains confident they were about to shatter Earth's resistance in one decisive strike. They did not know they were already inside the kill zone. Rourke's voice was steady as he issued the order. "Hold fire until the flagship crosses the marker. Then we end them." The minutes stretched into a tense silence. On the bridge of the Alliance flagship, a tall insectoid admiral leaned forward in his command chair, eyes locked on the planet below. "We have them," he hissed. "All ships, advance. Crush their defenses and take no prisoners." The fleet moved in, their sensor sweeps running over Jupiter's surface and finding nothing. To them, it confirmed what they already believed. Earth's forces were hiding, terrified to meet them in open space. The flagship passed the invisible marker. Rourke's eyes hardened. Fire! In an instant, the void erupted with light. Invisible platforms deep in Jupiter's orbit spat beams of focused energy that tore through alien shields as if they were mist. Capital ships vanished in blinding explosions, their debris scattering into the storms below. The Erebus joined the assault, its ghost lance striking without warning, ripping ships apart from the inside. Panic spread through the Alliance ranks. Their comm channels filled with overlapping cries for help, desperate calls for retreat, and frantic demands to know where the attacks were coming from. The insectoid admiral on the flagship barked orders, but his own ship shuddered under the impact of a hidden cannon's strike, hull plating peeling away like paper. He realized too late that this was no battle, it was an execution. Rourke gave no quarter. No survivors, he ordered coldly. Every ship here dies. The Alliance fleet tried to scatter, but Jupiter's gravity and the positioning of the hidden weapons forced them into narrow escape corridors. Those corridors were already targeted. One by one, the enemy ships were annihilated, their wreckage joining the storm of fire and metal swirling in Jupiter's shadow. Within minutes, more than half the fleet was gone. In the chaos, the flagship attempted a desperate jump to hyperspace, but the Erebus's weapons officer was faster. A single ghost lance strike disabled its core, leaving it adrift and burning. The insectoid admiral's last transmission before his ship exploded was a single bitter truth, broadcast across Alliance channels. Earth was ready for us. When the last enemy vessel fell silent, the void returned to darkness. The hidden cannons powered down, their massive barrels cooling in the cold of space. The Erebus drifted among the wreckage, scanning for any survivors who might carry news of what had happened here. There were none. Rourke opened a channel to Earth Command. Jupiter defense systems confirmed operational. Enemy fleet eliminated. Proceeding to next objective. The President's voice came through crisp and calm. Well done, Admiral. Phase 3 is authorized. Begin Black Dawn. Rourke ended the transmission and turned to his crew. Set course for Alliance territory. We take the fight to them. Far from Jupiter, in the Alliance's core worlds, the news arrived like a hammer blow. The fleet they had sent to crush Earth had vanished without explanation. Only fragments of comm traffic remained, most of it incoherent, screaming, or static. Political panic rippled through the Council. Military leaders demanded reinforcements, but their fleets were now stretched thin, guarding against attacks from human forces they could not locate. None of them realized that the true danger was already on its way. Humanity was done waiting for the next strike. For the first time in the war, Earth was going on the offensive, and the galaxy was about to see just how deadly a smiling enemy could be. The Erebus slipped into Alliance territory under the cover of absolute silence, its hull cloaked against every known detection method. Admiral Rourke stood on the command deck, eyes fixed on the holographic projection of their route. This was no simple raid. Black Dawn was a surgical strike aimed at the heart of the Alliance's war machine. Intelligence had identified 3 key shipyards within a single star cluster, giant orbital forges where their dreadnoughts were born, each one producing the kind of warships that had been burning human colonies for years. Destroy those shipyards, and the Alliance's ability to project power would collapse for decades. The plan was simple in design, brutal in execution. The Erebus would arrive at the edge of the system, deploy stealth drones to map enemy patrols, and then use its ghost lance and experimental kinetic warheads to tear through the shipyards before any serious defense could mobilize. But Rourke knew nothing in war was ever simple. The closer they got, the thicker the enemy presence became. Patrol cruisers, early warning satellites, and deep-range scanning buoys. One mistake, one sensor ping too strong, and the Erebus would have the full weight of the Alliance Navy bearing down on it before they even reached the target. The bridge was dark, every console dimmed to its lowest setting to avoid giving away their presence. In the silence, the faint hum of the ship's systems felt like a heartbeat. Rourke's voice was low but firm. Begin passive scans. No emissions until we're in position. Across the darkened bridge, officers moved like shadows, their hands gliding over controls. The first shipyard came into view, a sprawling lattice of metal and light, suspended above a molten world whose gravity fed raw materials into the forge. Hundreds of workers and drones swarmed over unfinished battleships, welding armor plates into place, installing weapons that would one day rain destruction on human worlds. Rourke studied the tactical overlay. The shipyard's defenses were strong but predictable. Stationary turrets, drone wings on fixed patrol paths, and a few escort frigates idling near the perimeter. Nothing that could stand against a properly timed strike. "We hit them first," Rourke said, "fast and without warning. No survivors." The Erebus glided into position, its weapons arrays cycling silently. Then, with a single command, the void exploded into violence. The ghost lance fired, its beam punching straight through the unfinished hull of a dreadnought, igniting its fuel reserves in a chain of detonations that tore the shipyard apart from within. At the same time, kinetic warheads launched from hidden bays smashed into the station's support structures, sending massive sections spinning into the planet's gravity well. The defenders scrambled to respond, but they were already dead. The Erebus was gone, accelerating toward the second target before the wreckage had even stopped burning. The second shipyard was larger, better defended, with a shield grid covering its main production bays. This time, brute force wouldn't work. Rourke ordered the launch of 3 stealth drones, each equipped with a short-range EMP charge. They drifted silently toward the shield generators, their small profiles invisible to the shipyard's scanners. When they detonated, the shield grid collapsed instantly, and the Erebus struck again, missiles, energy beams, and railgun slugs tearing through ships still docked for repairs. Escape pods launched in desperation, but Rourke gave the order no captain in the galaxy wanted to hear. Target them all. The war was past the point of mercy. Every survivor was a potential enemy tomorrow. The second shipyard was gone in under 10 minutes. The crew barely had time to reload before the third and final target appeared on their screens, and here, the Alliance had finally guessed what was happening. A defensive fleet was already in position, a wall of heavy cruisers and destroyers bristling with weapons. At the center of their formation, a massive command carrier loomed, its size dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. Rourke stared at it for a long moment before speaking. "We've come too far to turn back." The Erebus accelerated, diving straight toward the enemy formation. The cruisers opened fire first, streams of plasma and kinetic rounds cutting through the void. But the Erebus was faster, weaving between the salvos, its point defense systems shredding incoming missiles. The Ghost Lance struck the lead cruiser, splitting it in half, while the ship's railguns hammered another into silence. The command carrier responded with a weapon Rourke had never seen before, a beam of swirling green energy that tore through space like a living thing. It grazed the Erebus's shields, and alarms screamed across the bridge as the defensive barrier collapsed in sections. "Evasive!" Rourke barked. The Erebus rolled, diving beneath the carrier's line of fire. Then, from its belly, it launched the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created, the Hammerhead missile. Slow, heavily armored, and carrying a warhead capable of shattering a moon, the Hammerhead was designed for one purpose: to end a battle in a single shot. It plowed through the carrier's shields, drilling deep into its hull before detonating. The explosion was blinding, tearing the carrier into fragments and sending shockwaves rippling through the enemy fleet. Demoralized and leaderless, the remaining cruisers tried to retreat, but the Erebus hunted them down one by one. When the last enemy ship fell silent, the third shipyard was left exposed. Rourke gave the order, and the Erebus reduced it to molten scrap. In less than an hour, 3 of the Alliance's most critical production facilities had been erased from existence. The Erebus jumped to slip space before reinforcements could arrive, vanishing into the black. Behind them, the star cluster burned. Across the galaxy, news of the strikes spread like wildfire. In the human colonies, cheers erupted, songs were sung, streets filled with celebration. For the first time since the war began, humanity wasn't just surviving, they were winning. But in the halls of the Alliance Council, fear and rage boiled. The destruction of the shipyards meant the loss of entire fleets, years of production, and billions in resources. Worse, it proved a terrifying truth they had refused to accept. Humanity could strike anywhere, at any time, and there was nothing the Alliance could do to stop them. For Rourke, victory was only the beginning. Black Dawn had crippled the enemy's industry, but now came the true purpose of the operation: to draw the Alliance's forces away from their borders, leaving their core worlds vulnerable. And in the shadows of deep space, the rest of Earth's hidden fleets were already on the move. The tension in the galaxy had reached its highest point as fleets moved like shadows across the void. Their presence felt even when unseen. In the War Council of the Galactic Alliance, heated voices clashed over maps of stars and supply routes. They believed they had finally cornered humanity, that their overwhelming numbers and centuries of experience would crush Earth's defenses in one swift blow. But on Earth, far from the buzzing arguments of alien generals, there was no panic. The leaders of humanity gathered in silence, their eyes locked on the slowly approaching fleets displayed on massive screens. There was no fear, only calculation. General Hayes, standing in the command chamber of the Terran Defense Network, gave the slightest smile as the reports rolled in. "They think they're hunting prey," he muttered, "but they've walked straight into the hunter's den." The first signs of humanity's plan began to unfold in the outer systems. Seemingly, abandoned human colonies turned out to be bait, designed to lure enemy fleets into carefully prepared kill zones. Entire asteroid belts had been fitted with hidden railgun arrays and cloaked missile platforms. The moment the enemy fleets crossed the invisible threshold, the void exploded with fire. Missiles streaked through the darkness in perfect coordination, each strike calculated to cripple without warning. Alien captains, confident just moments before, were suddenly screaming orders as their ships were torn apart from angles they couldn't detect. Yet this was only the first layer of Earth's defense. In the shadows of nearby moons, massive human dreadnoughts, silent and cold, powered up their weapons. These ships had not been shown in any scans or battle records. They were the product of decades of secret research, their armor forged from alloys unknown to the rest of the galaxy. When they moved, they did so with precision, each blast from their main cannons capable of splitting a cruiser in two. The first wave of enemy fleets crumbled faster than anyone in the Alliance could process. But humanity did not stop there. Instead of retreating to defend, they pushed forward, sending smaller, faster ships to disrupt supply lines and communications. Alien admirals, now desperate, began to realize this was not a war of defense. It was a hunt, and humanity had become the predator. Reports flooded the Galactic Alliance Council chambers. Systems once firmly under their control had gone silent. Patrol fleets disappeared without a trace. Some survivors claimed they saw nothing, only that one moment their sensors were clear, and the next, their ships were being torn apart by invisible forces. Whispers of the Ghost Fleet began to spread, and even the most loyal soldiers of the Alliance started to fear the dark between the stars. In one hidden war room deep beneath the surface of Mars, Commander Lin watched the unfolding chaos with steady eyes. "They still don't understand," she said quietly. "They thought they were declaring war on Earth. What they've done is declare war on a predator they cannot see." Back in the enemy's territory, panic began to spread through civilian populations. Entire spaceports locked down, fearful of sudden human strikes. The Alliance tried to reassure their people, But their own military leaders were starting to break under the strain. One by one, enemy strongholds began to fall, not through brute force, but through careful dismantling of their defenses. Humanity's strategy was clear: remove the enemy's ability to fight before the main assault even began. And through it all, Earth's leaders remained calm, smiling as each report came in. The galaxy had wanted war. Now, they were beginning to see what that truly meant when humanity was involved. This was not desperation. This was not survival. This was humanity finally standing, unshackled, and ready to strike until the stars themselves trembled. The galaxy was bleeding. Star systems, once shining with trade and life, now burned in silence, their skies littered with the husks of defeated fleets. The Galactic Alliance had thrown wave after wave at Earth, believing numbers would crush defiance, but each attack only made the humans more dangerous. In the hidden war rooms beneath the Terran Defense Command, the maps told a brutal truth. The enemy was collapsing. General Hayes stood before the holographic display, his voice calm but edged with the satisfaction of a predator closing in on prey. "We don't just break their fleets," he said. "We break their will." The war had shifted far from Earth's orbit. Now, humanity's ships prowled deep in enemy space, hitting targets that were never meant to be threatened. Massive orbital shipyards, once considered untouchable, erupted into explosions as human infiltration teams bypassed defenses and sabotaged reactors from within. Entire battle groups vanished without sending a single distress signal. Rumors began to spread among the alien crews, whispers of human ships that could vanish into shadows, of soldiers who appeared inside sealed halls without warning. The fear was becoming more dangerous than any weapon. On the world of Varian Prime, a key industrial hub for the Alliance, the enemy prepared for an inevitable siege. The planetary defense grid was powered, thousands of anti-orbital cannons ready to fire at the first sign of intrusion. The local governor promised the population they would be safe, but when the attack came, it was not from above. Instead, deep. Within the planet's capital, explosions ripped through power stations and communication relays. Lights across the city went dark, and in that blackout, human strike teams emerged from the shadows. By the time the defenses realized what was happening, their own control centers had been seized, their cannons turned silent. Without a single ship landing from orbit, the planet had fallen. In the Alliance War Council, the mood had shifted from confidence to desperation. Fleet commanders argued in loud, panicked voices, accusing each other of incompetence, of underestimating the humans, of failing to protect vital supply routes. But the truth they all feared to admit was simple. Humanity was fighting a war none of them understood. It wasn't just about territory or resources. Earth was dismantling their entire ability to wage war. From the shadows of distant asteroid fields to the crowded skies of alien metropolises, human operatives were everywhere. Cargo freighters that passed through security one day were discovered weeks later to have been carrying human saboteurs. Communication hubs randomly failed, but when investigated, there was no trace of the attackers. It was a ghost war, and the galaxy had no defense for it. Even the most fortified Alliance worlds began to receive strange messages, brief transmissions, from unknown sources that contained only one sentence: "The stars are not yours." Panic took root among civilian populations. Refugee fleets clogged hyperspace lanes, fleeing toward the inner core worlds in the hope that humanity's reach would not follow. But humanity's reach was growing. The Ghost Fleet had become more than a rumor. It was now a nightmare etched into the minds of every alien captain. Commander Lin, reviewing reports from deep space reconnaissance units, allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. "Every move they make is reactive," she said. "They've stopped leading this war. They're just trying to survive it." But survival was becoming less possible with each passing day. The enemy's fuel depots were running dry, their weapons factories struggling to produce under constant disruption. Even the morale of their elite soldiers was shattering. In intercepted communications, human analysts heard the desperation in alien voices. Some openly questioned if the war was worth continuing at all. In a final act of defiance, the Alliance attempted to regroup for one massive counterattack, pulling together what remained of their most powerful fleets. Their plan was to strike directly at the Sol system, hoping that even if they lost, they could destroy Earth itself and claim some twisted victory. But they never reached the system. Halfway through hyperspace, their navigation systems failed. One by one, their ships dropped out of jump unexpectedly, right into carefully prepared human ambush zones. Entire fleets were erased before they understood what had happened. Back on Earth, the command centers remained calm, the hum of machinery, and the flicker of holographic maps the only sound. Humanity was not rushing. They were not reckless. They were methodical, and that was what made them terrifying. The galaxy had demanded war, and humanity had delivered it, not in rage, but in precision. The war was no longer a battle for survival. It was the dismantling of an empire, and every alien world knew their turn was coming. Soon, there would be nowhere left to run. The once mighty Galactic Alliance was now a shadow of its former self. Entire sectors had fallen silent, their defense fleets either destroyed or surrendered. The maps in the Terran Defense Command no longer showed red enemy territory spreading toward Earth. Instead, they showed expanding swaths of human-controlled space, pushing deeper into the core systems of the enemy. But the humans weren't reckless. They advanced with surgical precision, cutting apart the Alliance piece by piece. In the Grand War Council on Earth, General Hayes stood at the center, his voice cold and deliberate as he outlined the next phase. "We take their heart," he said, pointing to the luminous sphere representing the enemy's capital system. "Once that falls, the rest will collapse without a fight." Around him, commanders nodded grimly. They knew this would be the most dangerous operation yet, but they also knew the enemy was too weak to mount a proper defense. Still, Hayes warned them not to underestimate a cornered opponent. In the heart of the enemy capital, the Alliance's ruling council was in chaos. Their grand chamber, once a place of authority and control, had turned into a scene of shouting and desperation. Reports poured in hourly of human raids on supply convoys, sabotage in weapons factories, and assassinations of high-ranking officers. No one felt safe anymore, not even in the fortified palace that overlooked the capital city. Rumors spread of human infiltration units already operating inside the system. The ruling council's leader, High Chancellor Voren, refused to believe that humans could breach the inner core. "They're too far away," he insisted to his advisors. "Our fleets will hold them." But his confidence cracked when a live broadcast from a military station in orbit suddenly cut to static, and moments later, every screen in the council chamber lit up with a single, human voice. "Your time is over." In deep space, the Ghost Fleet was already moving. Thousands of human ships, from sleek stealth frigates to massive dreadnoughts, formed into coordinated strike groups. Their hyperspace jumps were staggered to confuse enemy sensors, arriving from multiple directions at once. The enemy's defense network lit up in panic, trying to track hundreds of false signals and decoys while the real attack force closed in. When the first human warships emerged in the capital system, they didn't attack immediately. Instead, they spread out, systematically destroying communication relays and sensor platforms, blinding the enemy before the main assault began. On the ground, the capital's cities prepared for bombardment, but none came. Instead, human strike. Teams appeared deep inside the city, moving like shadows, taking out power plants, disabling shield generators, and capturing key command hubs. The panic was worse than any orbital strike could have caused. No one knew where the humans were, only that they were everywhere. In orbit, the enemy's Grand Defense Fleet finally engaged, but they were fighting blind and disorganized. Human. Dreadnoughts tore through their formations with devastating broadsides, while smaller Terran ships darted in and out of the chaos, crippling engines and disabling weapons before disappearing again. Every alien captain who tried to rally their forces found themselves cut off, isolated, and destroyed. High Chancellor Varenne, watching the disaster unfold from his fortified command tower, finally understood the truth. This was not a battle they could win. Still, pride refused to let him surrender. He ordered the last reserves to launch a desperate counterattack against the human flagship. The attack never reached it. Before the enemy ships could even close the distance, precision. Strikes from human railguns shattered their hulls. In less than an hour, the once formidable capital fleet was reduced to burning wreckage drifting in space. Inside the city, the sounds of battle grew closer to the council chamber. Voren's guards fought fiercely, but they were no match for the human soldiers advancing with unshakable determination. The doors to the chamber exploded inward, and armored Terran Marines stormed inside, their weapons trained on the council members. Hayes himself appeared moments later via HoloLink, his voice calm but final. "This war is over," he said. "You will surrender all systems or your capital will burn." Voren, trembling, looked at the destruction outside his window. The skyline was blackened, entire districts plunged into darkness. The enemy had no fleets left, no allies to call upon. With a voice heavy with defeat, he gave the order to surrender. Across the galaxy, the news spread in minutes. Human ships transmitted the surrender order to every occupied world, every battlefront, every isolated garrison. In some places, alien soldiers dropped their weapons without a fight. In others, the local populations erupted in relief, seeing the war, finally, come to an end. But for humanity, this was not just victory. It was a warning. The galaxy had learned the cost of underestimating Earth, and that memory would not fade. In the command centers on Earth, the screens began to go dark as the war alerts faded away. For the first time in years, the Sol system was at peace. But, deep inside, every commander knew that peace would not last forever, and when the next threat came, humanity would be ready. The war was over, but the galaxy did not feel peaceful. The surrender of the Galactic Alliance had sent shock waves through every star system. Yet in the silence that followed, an unease lingered like a shadow. Humanity had achieved the impossible, defeating a power that had ruled for centuries, but victory had come with a heavy cost. Entire fleets lay in ruin, planets scarred from orbital strikes, and countless lives lost on both sides. On Earth, the celebrations were loud and relentless, but in the war rooms beneath the surface, the mood was different. General Hayes stood before a massive holographic display of the galaxy, its sectors now marked in shifting shades of blue, representing newly secured territories. "We hold half the galaxy," Hayes said quietly to his senior staff, "but the other half is watching us." He knew the truth. Power never stayed unchallenged for long. Other alien empires, silent during the war, were now studying humanity with a mix of fear and envy. Some would seek alliances, others, revenge. Intelligence reports already hinted at covert military buildups beyond the frontier. Hayes gave the order for all fleets to remain at full readiness and for the construction of new Titan-class warships to begin immediately. The Ghost Fleet, which had been instrumental in breaking the alliance, was reassigned to deep space reconnaissance. Their mission, find threats before they found Earth. Meanwhile, on alien worlds once ruled by the alliance, chaos erupted. With the central government gone, local warlords, rebel factions, and opportunists vied for control. Some planets welcomed human forces as liberators, others saw them as conquerors. The Terran High Command deployed peacekeeping forces, but in truth, they were more focused on securing strategic resources, shipyards, energy cores, and hyperlane hubs. On the former Alliance capital, now under Terran occupation, the once glorious spires still smoked from the final battle. The streets were filled with silent, hollow-eyed citizens, unsure whether the new rulers would be better than the old. A human officer, Commander Rains, led a patrol through the city. He could feel the weight of their stares, the mixture of fear and resentment. He knew this was the fragile edge of victory, where one wrong move could turn quiet submission into rebellion. In the outer colonies, whispers spread of an even greater power lurking beyond known space, watching the war from the shadows. Some claimed they had seen massive, unmarked ships observing the final battles from the edge of star systems, never intervening. The Terran intelligence network dismissed these as rumors, but Hayes kept a classified file open on the possibility. Too many strange sensor readings had been logged to ignore. Back on Earth, political debates raged. Some leaders argued for withdrawing human forces and letting alien worlds govern themselves, fearing the costs of an endless occupation. Others insisted that only through dominance could lasting peace be achieved. Hayes stayed out of the politics, but in his heart, he knew one thing. If humanity appeared weak now, the galaxy would descend on them like predators. Months after the surrender, the first major challenge emerged. In a distant sector, a former Alliance admiral refused to acknowledge the surrender order. Using hidden shipyards, he rebuilt a fleet from salvaged warships and declared the formation of a new regime dedicated to avenging the Alliance's defeat. Hayes saw the threat instantly. If even one breakaway faction succeeded, it could inspire dozens more. He ordered an immediate strike. The Ghost Fleet moved without warning, infiltrating the sector under full stealth. In a single night, the Admiral's shipyards went dark, his warships reduced to drifting debris. The message was clear: resistance would be crushed before it could grow. Still, Hayes knew this was just the beginning. Power vacuums did not stay empty. Reports came in of secret meetings between minor empires, trade guilds, and independent pirate lords. They were forming something new, an unspoken alliance bound by a single goal: to contain humanity before it became unstoppable. Hayes convened his senior commanders and laid out a simple truth. We've won the war, but we haven't secured the peace. The galaxy will come for us again. When they do, we won't just be ready, we'll strike first. In the months that followed, Earth transformed. Shipyards worked day and night, building fleets larger than anything in human history. New orbital fortresses were deployed along the frontier, each bristling with enough firepower to hold off entire armadas. The Ghost Fleet expanded its reach, disappearing into uncharted space for months at a time, returning with maps of hidden hyperlanes and intelligence on distant civilizations. Yet even as humanity grew stronger, there was a sense of inevitability, that somewhere out there, another war was already being written. Hayes often stood alone in the observation deck of the Terran High Command, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, beautiful, and dangerous. Humanity had claimed its place among the great powers, but the price of that place was eternal vigilance. And so, the peace that followed the fall of the Alliance was not a true peace, but an interlude, a silent countdown to the next great conflict. For Hayes and every soldier who had survived, the lesson was clear. In the galaxy, survival belonged not to those who fought hardest, but to those who never stopped preparing for the fight to come.